audit report on reassessing implementation of the Regulatory Fairness Act. I'm going to ask that members mute their phones and their computers. You never know when a phone is going to ring or someone's going to start their lawnmower next door, or anything else might happen. Those things can kind of override whoever's speaking and disrupt the meeting. So if everybody would please remember to mute when they're not speaking and then to unmute when they're called upon if they're looking to ask a question. I'm going to give members a couple more minutes to log on and go through a little bit of other background information before I go and do any kind of a roll call. We're conducting this meeting today with video conferencing technology. The meeting is also being streamed live over TVW. Both JLARC and the SAO recognize the value of the I-900 audits and allowing the public the opportunity to comment. Unfortunately, because of the COVID outbreak and some of the restrictions that are resulting from that, we're not able to be in a hearing room and have everybody there. So it does make it a little bit more difficult to have the public in and doing testimony and coordinating everything to allow people to do testimony on this Zoom meeting is difficult as well. So we are inviting the public to provide written testimony based on what they hear today, based on the audit report. They should be sent to jlarc@leg.wa.gov. Just remember jlarc at Legislature Washington Government, leg.wa.gov. And you can go to the JLARC website to get that as well. Written testimony will be provided to JLARC members and available to the public on the JLARC website after we've received it. We plan to offer the option for remote testimony at future I-900 meetings. We're just trying to work through all the technological and other issues that arise in trying to do that. But we are very interested in hearing what the public has to say. If you wish to comment, we are providing means by which you can do it via the internet. Staff from the State Auditor's Office will give a presentation of their performance audit. JLARC members can let me know during the presentation if they have questions using the raise hand feature. And I'll try to monitor that. If I don't, I'm sure JLARC staff will be cutting in and reminding me. Also, if you've got your video turned on, if you just kind of raise your hand, that will also kind of clue me in that you're looking to ask a question. After the presentation, agency staff will provide comments on the audit report and members will have an opportunity to ask questions. So you'll have opportunities to ask questions of the audit staff as well as any agency staff. I do want to remind people that this I-900 hearing is basically a forum for which the I-900 required audits can be put out to the public. The state auditor works independently of the state legislature under a statewide elected official. So they are autonomous from the JLARC. JLARC has not been involved in putting the report together. It is not something that is sponsored by JLARC. It is done independently by the state auditor's office. But we do provide the forum by which the state auditor's office can report that out and make it available, more available and more visible to the public. So with that, I'm going to remind members and participants to mute their phones, to mute their computers. And having asked you to mute your phones and computers, I'm now going to go to a roll call where I'm going to ask you to unmute. But unmute to let me know that you're present so that we have it for the public record. And then go back to mute again if you would please. Keenan, did you have something?
No, I was just going to help for members that aren't present. We can see who's signed in, so I can let you know when you do the roll
Okay.
call.
So we'll start Jake Fye,
Is not present.
Larry Hoff,
Is not present.
Mark Mullet, obviously not present. If he was, I wouldn't be the one running the meeting. Senator Shelley Short,
Not present.
Senator Keith Wagner,
Not present.
Representative Noel Frame,
Not present.
Representative Christine Kilduff,
Not present.
Representative Paulette.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning, Representative Paulette. Representative Stokesbury,
Not present.
Senator Linda Wilson,
Not present.
Senator Bob Hasagawa,
Not present.
Representative Vicky Kraft.
I'm here.
Good to see you, Vicky. Thanks for joining us. Senator Rebecca Saldana,
Not present.
Senator Dean Taco,
Not present.
and Representative Ed Orcutt is present. Just wanted to make sure that was on the record. Okay. With that, I think we'll go right into the state auditor's office. Aaron Everett and Penny Rarick. Oh, excuse me, those are agency representatives. So we will have the SAO staff, Deborah Stevens and Corey Crowley Hall, to present the report. My apologies.
Good morning. Actually, unfortunately, Deborah Stevens, who is the lead on this audit, was not able to join us today, so I'll be presenting in her place along with Corey. So my name is Shauna Good, and I am a Principal Performance Auditor with the Office of the Washington State Auditor. And presenting with me today is Corey Crowley Hall, who is a Performance Auditor, also with the Office of the Washington State Auditor. I oversaw the audit we're presenting today, and Corey worked on it. And I said, unfortunately, Deborah Stevens, who is the lead, is not able to join us today. However, if you have any questions that Corey and I are not able to answer today, she will certainly be available to help us get you those answers. Before we begin our presentation, I just want to take a quick moment to thank the 16 agencies that were involved in the audit and the Governor's Office of Regulatory Innovation and Assistance, or ORIA, for all the help they extended to us as we conducted this audit. To give some background for you, this audit follows up on the audit we completed in 2016 on agency compliance with the Regulatory Fairness Act. A couple of important legislative actions resulted from that audit. First, the Governor's Office of Regulatory Innovation and Assistance was required to provide agencies with tools and assistance to help them comply with the Act. And second, the Auditor's Office was required to complete this follow-up audit prior to mid-2021. We're very happy to share the results of our work this time. Just to give you a quick overview of what we'll be sharing in more detail in our presentation, agencies have significantly improved their implementation of the Act. Agency staff told us that ORIA's assistance has been tremendously helpful, and they're grateful to have those resources available to them. Agency staff were also forthcoming about some of the challenges they still face that we'll talk about a little later. And they hope that ORIA can continue and even expand their help in the future. Washington passed the Regulatory Fairness Act in 1982, following similar legislation at the federal level. The law is designed to ensure regulatory agencies consider the financial effects of their proposed rules and to mitigate costs that disproportionately affect small businesses whenever possible. And to do that, agencies must collect data relevant to the specific businesses affected by a new or modified rule. They must also make numerous calculations and prepare a small business economic impact statement, or SBEIS, in certain circumstances. The law has some key decision points where agencies, in navigating the requirements of the Act, whether they need to fulfill additional requirements. The first decision point is determining whether any of the numerous allowable exemptions to the Act apply to a proposed rule. If so, the agency does not need to do any further analysis. If not, they must determine whether the proposed rule will only impose costs on businesses that fall below what's known as a minor cost threshold. If they fall below that threshold, again, they need not go any further. If they don't, they must complete the requirements in a small business economic impact statement and mitigate disproportionate costs where legal and feasible. Now, Corey is going to walk you through a little more detail about these steps and how agencies did in this audit period relative to the audit period we evaluated in 2016. Corey?
Thank you, Shauna. I'm Corey Crowley Hall. I'm a performance auditor on this report. And I can't figure out how to get my video on. There it is. I'll be speaking to the results of the agency rules. Although the first step an agency needs to consider is whether the rule is exempt, we'll address those that are subject to the Act's requirements first, and then we'll discuss exemptions a little bit later. When no exemption applies to a given rule, agencies must determine whether the costs imposed by the rule on businesses are considered less than minor. The Act defines a less than minor cost as a cost per business that is less than 0.3% of revenue, or $100, whichever is greater, or 1% of annual payroll. To determine this, agencies would need to calculate the costs that the rule imposes on businesses and compare that to one of those thresholds. Therefore, we asked agencies to send us their cost analysis documentation. We considered a cost analysis sufficient if they provided a basic level of credible support. We saw significant improvement in the quality of the analyses that agencies had conducted to determine the costs of the rule to business. In this audit, nearly 90% of the rules claiming less than minor costs had full support, compared to just 51% in the previous audit. When an agency determines that the rule would create cost to businesses that are more than minor, they must complete a small business economic impact statement, or SBEIS. The purpose of the SBEIS is to outline the costs of the rule and to determine whether those costs would disproportionately impact small businesses compared to large ones. If the rule would cause a disproportionate impact on small businesses, the agency is required to mitigate those costs for small businesses where legal and feasible. We analyzed each small business economic impact statement for whether it contained the various elements required by law. These include the costs of compliance, the potential for lost sales or revenue, and a comparison of the cost of compliance for small businesses versus the 10% that are the largest. We also saw a lot of improvement in the small business economic impact statements. In the prior audit, only 40% were complete, compared to 72% this time around. We considered an SBEIS complete if it included all of the required elements, including some consideration of any required cost mitigation strategies. Now we'll turn to the exemptions. The reason we left this for last is because we took our analysis a step further in this audit than in the prior audit. The Regulatory Fairness Act contains many exemptions from completing an SBEIS. These exemptions are generally for rules where an analysis of the costs would not make sense. For example, rules that only clarify the language of an existing rule without changing its effect, rules that adopt a statute without material change, or rules that do not affect small businesses, which was added to the law by the legislature as a result of the previous audit. In the prior audit, we looked at whether the exemptions claimed were actually listed as exemptions in the statute. And in the previous audit, only half of the exemptions claimed were actual exemptions. In this audit, every exemption claimed was listed as an actual exemption in the Regulatory Fairness Act. We took our analysis of exemptions a step further this time and looked at whether the entirety of the rule was covered by the exemptions that agencies claimed. This proved complex because different parts of a rule might be exempt for different reasons. For example, one section could only be making typographical changes, and the next section could be explicitly dictated by statute. We discovered that only about 2/3 of rules were exempt under the exemptions that were claimed by the agency. We identified some rules that were exempt for reasons not initially claimed by the agency, and others where we could identify no exemption that seemed to apply. Agency staff recognized this as an area that was difficult and said they would like more help correctly applying exemptions to rules. And now I'll turn back to Shauna to wrap up the presentation.
Thank you, Corey. Because ORIA's tools and assistance were to help agencies comply with the requirements of the Act, we surveyed agency staff to understand whether they felt the assistance was helpful and sufficient. And agency staff overwhelmingly praised ORIA's help. Most agencies regularly use their tools and assistance, and most also participate in regular cross-agency discussions and trainings. And staff expressed appreciation for having ORIA's help and for the resources they provide. Staff were also open with us about the challenges they still face, and they look forward to ORIA's continued and possibly even expanded assistance. A couple of specific areas agencies mentioned as still posing challenges that they believe ORIA can help with are: first, finding data that specifically represents the businesses that are affected by their proposed rules. And second, applying the correct exemptions to the rules. Most agency staff also mentioned the extreme value of the cross-agency discussions and asked for more of them. And finally, a couple of agencies mentioned potential improvements to the CR 102, which is a rulemaking form. In our previous audit, we made recommendations about improvements to that form, and the Code Revisor's Office gladly made those changes even before the report was published. Our recommendations are aimed at ORIA, asking them to help with the challenges agencies have identified and that I just spoke about. And you can read our recommendations here. But we want to stress again how pleased we were to learn of the significant improvements that agencies made in implementing the Act and the enormous success of ORIA in providing the much appreciated assistance to agency staff. And at this time, we would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You're muted, Representative Orcutt.
Thanks for the presentation. If you could unshare the screen, it will get me back to all of our members. And that will better enable me to see if anybody has any questions. Before we go to questions, if anybody does have a question, go ahead and go into the participant box and raise your hand. And I believe Senator Hasegawa joined us, is that correct?
Yes,
Senator
I'm here.
Hasegawa?
Yep,
Okay,
I'm
great.
here.
We'll have you on the record as having been present. And with that, do we have any questions? Representative Paulette, I see your hand is raised.
I've got a couple questions, if I may. be allowed the leeway, Mr. Chair.
Actually, what I'll do with questions is I will just allow everybody to ask 2 questions. If you ask one and you don't need a follow-up, just say thank you. Otherwise, you can go right into your second question. How's that?
Perfect. These are related, so I'll just ask. If you could dive into a little bit more about the cost of preparing the small business impact statements, I'd appreciate it. And in particular, then the follow-up is, do you have any data on what percent or cost of agencies to prepare them in terms for impact statements where the cost is estimated to be below 1% of revenue or $1,000 for affected small businesses?
Thank you, Representative Paulette. We did not in this audit look at the agency resources needed to prepare the small business economic impact statements. So I do not have a ready answer to you for that. Certainly they have staff time dedicated to that. That would really be the only cost, except in some cases where some agencies have hired consultants that I know of to prepare them.
Representative Paulette, do you have follow-up?
Well, and do we have any data on percentage of SBISs that are done where the cost to the small businesses is, I mean, right now, cost of $300 or something on a $100,000 a year business would trigger an SBIS. But let's say below 1% of revenue for small businesses, how many of them are done or $1,000 cost?
I believe you're referring to the minor cost thresholds there, Representative Paulette.
Right.
Those do not require an SBIS, although there are cases in which agencies have prepared one where it may not have been required. I don't have that information readily available for you, but we can probably get some.
My question, what I'd like the data on is if there's any data, not on who falls below the current threshold, but is there any data above the current threshold where we are doing them on what I run a nonprofit, same as a small business. I would consider it a minor cost if a regulation that directly affected me incurred a $500 cost per year, but that would trigger a small business impact statement. So thinking about $1,000 threshold or 1% of total revenue or any other threshold above the current exemption level where do we have any data?
I should be able to get back to you with some information on that, Representative Paulette.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and then I'll remind members that once you've asked your question to go ahead and put your hand down, and then I'll know whether or not you're wanting any additional questions. I'd also mention to staff that we also have Scott Frank and Chris Cortinas from the auditor's office. When somebody asks a question, if you want to jump in and answer, if you can use the raise hand feature as well, please do that and I'll try to monitor that. I'm not seeing any other hands raised right now. Does anybody else have a question? I'm not seeing any hands come up. So I'm going to say thank you to Shauna and Corey. And with that, we'll go on to what I gave you a preview of earlier, and that's Aaron Everett and Penny Rarick. of the ORIA. Aaron, do you want to start off?
Thank you very much, Representative Orcutt, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Aaron Everett. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office for Regulatory Innovation and Assistance, or ORIA. And with me today is a member of our team at ORIA who is the maestro of Regulatory Fairness Act work and whose skills are largely to account for our ability to help agencies successfully with their Regulatory Fairness Act compliance, and that's Penny Rarick. So she's a person who brings not only the technical skills of having run a regulatory program, but she's also sort of walked in the shoes of the agencies who are responsible for implementing the RFA, and so she's a trusted source of information for them, and I'm grateful to have her on the team. So Penny, do you want to just sort of click your video on and wave hello, and if we have some question come up, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, I'm Penny Rarick. Thank you for that introduction.
So I just have some brief remarks. I don't know how many times this committee has had the pleasure of reviewing an audit result that the state fully concurs in, but this is one. We're happy to have worked with the auditor's office and the state agencies share the legislature and the auditor's office priority and importance for being effective at the Regulatory Fairness Act implementation. As far as ORIA's approach here, our agency response and action steps are in the back of the audit report, and I tried to be pretty succinct to make that an easy read. But I'll just cover that quickly. When we were asked to take this on, it's tempting to make it sort of a technical task and provide agencies with procedural help and training, and all of those things are important, but there's really more of a people-based approach here, because I think that as I looked at it, the toughest thing that agencies were struggling with in implementing RFA was just lack of familiarity and a lack of a place to go when they had a question that felt like they could ask it in confidence and get a straight answer to it. So that's where Penny comes in. It took us a little while to reorganize our organization to bring the right set of skills on to do this work. It's only a half an FTE worth of money that was appropriated with the original bill in 2017, 1120, the last round of changes to the act. So it took me a little bit of time to restructure us to help agencies effectively, but Penny's been really valuable, as you've heard, to the agency staff. And I have to credit their willingness and focus on this issue, because it's one law that they need to comply with among many for any given rulemaking, and without their support and commitment to it, you wouldn't see the results that you've got. So they're to be credited for their success. As I said, we concur fully in the SAO's recommendations for how we can help agencies make even more improvements. I've tried to caution appropriately that we're only working with a little bit of resource to make this happen. So we're going to chip away at it as we can. That's why our action steps are a series of sort of at first low cost coordination, exploratory type of steps to try and help agencies with things like exemptions, and talk to the code advisor's office about the forms and the process and improving that. And I plan to develop a decision package around what I consider to be the most significant of the recommendations from the standpoint of value, and that's the data and agencies' access to high quality data. When you look at the sources of information that are available to agencies to try and make the calculations that are required in the Act, lots of times you're dealing with federal census data, quarterly census of the economic indicator data, Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and they are coarse in resolution. They are not timely. They're often time lagged by at least a couple of years, and sometimes more like 10 in the extreme case. And we hypothesize that there are much better, more accurate, and state-specific sources of data housed within the agencies. And so it's going to be a complicated task of taking inventory of those and figuring out what might need to change in order to provide, assemble and provide those data in a way that agencies can use. But we're going to set ourselves to that task and put together a decision package for the next budget cycle. Those are the big pieces that I wanted to just cover quickly for you. I'd be happy to stand for questions, and again, appreciate your time and look forward to talking.
Thank you, Aaron. Do any members have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. If you could please raise your hand if you have a question. Go into the participant feature at the bottom and use the hand raise. Not seeing any. So Aaron, we will thank you and Penny both for being here. And with that, I don't think we have any other business, do we, Keenan?
Well, if it's okay, I might take the opportunity to remind the members on the call and for the general public that we have a regular JLARC meeting next Monday to go over reports prepared by the JLARC staff. And those are going to cover topics on wildfire prevention and preparedness, regulation of ambulatory surgical facilities, and final reports on alternative public works contracting procedures and the annual tax preference reviews. So we got a full agenda of really good information for you next Monday, 11 o'clock.
Okay, Representative Paulette, did
Senator.
you have a question? Representative Paulette, did you have a question?
I see Senator Hasagawa's hand is up.
Yes, thanks. I just have a quick question for staff about logistical stuff. So I was trying to find this meeting link on the electronic bill book, and it doesn't have this meeting listed under JLARC at least. So is there a way to get to this information on the EBB?
There should be, Senator, and I'll have the admin staff follow up with you. I think it's because technically this is a subcommittee of JLARC, so you need to look for the I-900 subcommittee item in the bill book, but we'll confirm that for you and make sure you understand where to find them.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that, Senator Hasagawa. You had been at the bottom of my list, and so I had my cursor down there, and somehow you had jumped to the top, so you were off my screen, so I didn't see you. So my apologies for that. Any other questions? Seeing none. Well, Representative Paulette, you no longer have the record for the heaviest weight that you're carrying. You just have the world on your shoulders. Senator Hasagawa has the universe. So you've been bested by Senator Hasagawa today. And with that, I'm going to thank all of the members for being present. And thank you for your questions. Also want to thank the State Auditor's Office and also members of ORIA for being here today. And again, thank you to our staff. Doing these meetings by Zoom is always a little more difficult, and I appreciate all the work that you do, and I appreciate everybody's patience. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.